a little bit about how you entered in this arena, and maybe spend 5 minutes or so talking about, what keeps bringing you back to franchising and in particular business services. And then I have other questions.
Great. So I started 1969. I was at the University of Buffalo, and I took an H&R Block tax course. Loved it, and started working part-time. And 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block offices. I was youngest regional director in the country. And my dad was the CFO of a public company. He decided that we should computerize taxes. And so he left his job as CFO of a public company. I left Block. And in 1981, we developed the first tax software for an Apple computer. It was way before its time. No one wanted it. Even H&R Block said, we're never going to computerize. People don't care. We've tried it, and it doesn't save us any money. We're never going to computerize. And so got lucky and found a business here in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. Mel had died, and put a group together and bought Mel Jackson Tax Service. And then for a few years ran both the software company and Mel Jackson. Then we merged them together, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, and went public. And 15 years later, we sold it for $483 million. I had a non-compete that was 3 years in the United States, but Jackson Hewitt wasn't in Canada and still isn't. And so I knew the Canadian tax system because I grew up in Buffalo. We opened Liberty Tax in Canada. And within 3 years, just as I had in the US, I grew one of the top 100 retail franchise chains in Canada. Came back to the United States after my non-compete ended 3 years later in 2000. And not only did we grow faster than H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than both of them combined. So, and we opened in 12 years, we opened 4,000 locations. More than Block and Jackson Hewitt did combined. So we were the fastest growing ever, one of the top 10 fastest growing franchisors ever. What went public, it became worth about $500 million, just as I had done with Jackson Hewitt, and sold my shares 2.5 years ago, and now started Loyalty Brands. Loyalty Brands has 9 different brands, and we are on our way, adding about 1 a month to get to 50 brands.
Incredible. So for those franchisees that have no locations or maybe one location, what are some of the keys for rapid growth? And you can make some money with one business services franchise, but you can really develop a mini empire, getting up to 5, 10, and you've done that over the years, having so many locations across your brands. What are some of the keys to getting growth relatively fast?
Well, the key to everything is you hard work and find what you like to do, hard work and persevere. But delegation, I think, is something, one of the biggest diseases in American management, and you have to have the ability to delegate. The way I think of it is, many of our people, most managers are like Indian chiefs, that they have this one tribe. Then there's a chief of chiefs that has chiefs that are subordinate and has many different tribes. So most people are incapable of going to that next level, and it's a matter of, can you learn to delegate? Delegation is the key.
Okay. So having trusted managers that are then managing other managers or managing other folks, and really not being a control freak around your business.
Yeah, being a control freak is, it's extremely dangerous being a perfectionist, because the perfectionists I know, they're perfectionists about everything, and even the smallest things. So if you talk about penny wise and pound foolish, the perfectionist will make the perfect penny. Meantime, the pounds are running away from them.
Well said. So the service franchise industry is growing a lot, and there's a lot of appeal, especially given the current pandemic we're going. Asset-light business, not so much to start up. Less failure rate than food and beverage, for example, and some other industries in the franchising space. Could you give us a little overview and what keeps drawing you back to business services and potentially tax in particular?
You know, when I'll start with tax and say that when I was in college, it fit everything that I was looking for. It was mathematical, and that's my specialty. In fact, I was in college to be a mathematician. And it was serving people. That I got more thank yous for doing tax returns than virtually any part of my life, because
Okay.
people find it like visiting the dentist. They who don't, I really feel that most people that come into a tax office are like, except if they get big refunds, they're thinking, oh, this is horrible. It's like going to the dentist. I don't know about you, but I think 90% of people hate going to the dentist. So it's a very gratifying, and my goal is to give back and give more than I receive. And so it's so easy to do when you're in a service industry.
And why isn't it not just better to grow through corporate locations, and why grow through franchising?
You know, that was the second biggest mistake I ever made when I left Block and started Jackson Hewitt. After one season, we bought 6 offices. First season, we had 11 stores. Second season, we had 15. Third season, we had 22. Well, that's not bad to double in 3 years. That's not horrible. But meantime, Block had 9,000 offices, 9,000 offices, 9,000. And I realized that at this rate of growth, I would be about 400 years old before we got to Block size. And so we said, well, how can we do this even better? And much of what I've done is copied H&R Block. 95% of what I've used in my career is something that I learned by watching H&R Block. It's much simpler to follow a proven system than to invent your own industry like Fred Smith did at Federal Express.
Sure. So, basically you can grow a lot faster, have economies of scale, not just, through the locations you operate, but also the franchisees.
Actually, yes, the franchisees pay you to work for you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're building up net worth, and I've created, out of the 5,000 franchisees you referred to, 800 of them became millionaires.
I was going to ask you, like, I imagine it was in the hundreds.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
They pay me to work for me.
Yeah. And how do you see? You've mentioned a few brands: Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax Service, H&R Block. Many of those, you've been very, very involved with. What's the competitive landscape right now for tax in general in the United States?
Well, tax is interesting in a couple of ways. Number one is that the big three, or the big four, including ATAX, we have less than a 20% market share. 80% of this industry is dominated by mom and pops. And so there's a real opportunity to take market share from mom and pops. I think this is the way that explains it best. If Burger King gets next to McDonald's spends $30,000. They do a demographic study. Burger King doesn't spend anything. They get right next door to McDonald's. And when Burger King opens, McDonald's revenue doesn't go into the toilet. It continues to increase. They're the one of the fastest growing major brands over the last 10 years. So if Burger King isn't taking business from McDonald's, who are they taking business from? Mom and pops. And so I think when you think of it as a novice, you say, well, how are we going to compete with H&R Block? Well, actually, wherever there's an H&R Block, there are 6, 7, or 8 times as many customers that are going to a mom and pop. So
Sure.
We're really taking 80% of our customers from mom and pops. We're not taking them from Block.
So you're looking to differentiate against the mom and pops, and H&R Block's there, but you're not as concerned with them.
Exactly. If you could, Patrick, if you could compete with a competitor that does 11 million returns, or a competitor, or a bunch of mom and pops that do 80 million returns, who would you rather compete against? The 80 million, because that's a far bigger number, and we grab the lion's share of our business from mom and pops.
What's a profile of the mom and pop? Is it someone that got a CPA, or what's the profile of someone you're competing with?
No, there's no licensing requirement in 45 states, and so it's the biggest, most logical, likely mom and pop is someone that worked at H&R Block
Okay.
and that left, and
Brought
because they
over
have
some
100,000
clients.
preparers a year, and they lose 20. I mean, they keep 80%, but that's 20,000, and some of them go out and compete with them. So, like myself, I was with Block for 12 years. Block has created most of their competition.
Wow. And then so a prospective franchisee of say ATAX or Ledgers, do they need to have experience in accounting? What are you looking for in a franchisee that you might award a license to?
I think this scares people because when I say it, but it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. You don't need to be experienced in taxes to own a tax franchise. You don't need to be experienced in accounting. Just like I made the mistake of buying a gourmet restaurant, and I don't have the slightest idea how to cook. I never turned on my stove or the burners on top of my stove. So, but we teach you how to find taxpayers. We teach you how to find accountants, and we also have a system where you can send the work to us. You can offsite your work. So if you don't want to do the bookkeeping, if you don't want to do the tax, you can send it to us. So in all the industries we're in, whether it's dog grooming or elder care or home
Sure.
inspections or taxes, you don't need, it's a marketing business, and that's kind of a product or the result. So your
Okay.
marketing business that does elder care, your marketing business that does grooming of dogs, your market service that does tax returns. It's so you don't. I would never discourage anyone from learning the industry and being backup,
And
but
your product better, you're going to sell it better.
maybe uh, not everyone. That's not even true. That I mean, you would think that's true,
But not
but
necessarily.
you need to know the sizzle for sure, right? And do you need to know how to cook this thing? You need to know how to sell the sizzle.
Okay.
And so we're looking for people that are marketing people rather than doers. And if you're a doer, those are the most likely people to make the mistake of not delegating. If you're a skilled tax preparer, you're too likely to sit in that chair where you could hire someone for $15 or $20 and no one's CEO of your business. We're looking for CEOs.
I know it's very seasonal, but like, what's the employee structure look like at Ledgers, for example?
Well, Ledger's, unlike ATAX is a direct competitor of H&R Block, lower income customers that 80% of the customers make under $60,000. And so it's almost exclusively just low end tax returns. And
Okay.
so
Pretty
just like
straightforward.
just like at the other competitors, 80% of the people are only work during the tax season, and they are laid off on April 15th and then come back the next January. Ledgers is a year-round business with accounting, and most of our income at Ledgers is accounting and consulting versus tax returns. So our employees at Ledgers tend to work year-round.
Okay. And how long, I guess a couple of questions. How much does it cost to open up a Ledgers, like the minimum and maximum about?
Yeah, on average, all of our franchises are in the low investment. All 9 of our brands are in. It costs about $70,000.
Okay.
All in.
And are people financing it through like an SBA loan, or is it just all cash to open up?
The industry, the franchising industry has changed over the last since the Great Recession in 2008.
Sure.
Where before then, people typically would finance it out of the equity in their home. Since then, they convert their 401k or IRA
Okay.
and use those funds. So the biggest investment or more than 50% of people cash in their 401k. They don't need to cash it in because you can put the business into your
They
your
rolled
401k.
over.
Right.
Interesting. And what, I mean, for someone that's looking to open up a franchise in your portfolio or say another franchise, like how long should it take to break even from the time you have your first customer? Like what should be, what's like a realistic expectation?
Well, there's three kinds of franchisees, and it all breaks down to how much you're going to listen and follow the system. I'm not looking for the person that's most experienced, most educated, most intelligent. That doesn't matter. What matters is my job as a franchisor is to give you a proven system of business, and I've been doing that for 50 years. Giving franchisees, this is the yellow brick road. Get on the yellow brick road. And you would think that, Patrick, that everyone would do that. I mean, I've been doing this for 52 years. Most of our franchisees aren't even 35 years old. And they come in and yet they know better. I don't know if you have children, but you've been a child at least. People don't follow the system. And I brought in 5,000 franchisees in my career. Not one has followed the system. Not one has listened. And it's not real complicated stuff. It's not difficult to understand. I mean, one of the things, for example, is during the 4 busy weeks where we do 2/3 of our business, expand your hours by 2 hours a day. I mean, that's not hard to figure out, right? You don't have to be a rocket science, and yet half of our franchisees won't do that. So the key is how much you're going to follow the system. The people that listen, like 98%, they're superstars. And if you grab my book, it says I've created 800 millionaires. And if you listen less than 90%, I've had 1,000 franchisees lose their money. They lost their total investment. So I've had 800 millionaires and 1,000 that lost everything. Most are in.
And how does it work? Because over the last 6 years at Visa Franchise and Vetted Biz, we've had some clients that have had to either inject a lot more capital in the business or even close, which I see as like a business failure. And it's generally due to location or not following the franchisor system. But the location issues are more for food and beverage concepts and other industries that you really need. It's like, you're walking by and I'll stop for ice cream. So I imagine the tax, you don't have that issue as much. Why do these 1,000 or less than 1,000, why are they closing doors, or why aren't they making substantial money?
Well, let me talk about location, that it's so simple for me versus someone inventing a new restaurant, right?
Sure.
If you invent a new restaurant concept, how do you know where to open it? Well, we follow the Burger King model, that McDonald's spends the $30,000, they find a location, Burger King just gets next door. They know if McDonald's revenue is X, their revenue is going to be Y. And on the same token, there are 9,000 H&R Block offices, same as when I started competing with them in 1982. Okay. So if there's an H&R Block there and there's no A-tax, it's a vacancy. There's like a vacancy time, a sign, flashing vacancy sign. So we don't have to worry about ever having a bad location. We know that we can grow to be bigger than that H&R Block. So we know, and the IRS gives us the numbers of their buy.
Yeah, so they're legally, as a tax preparer, it's all publicly available in terms of how many cases, and then you can just go on their site to see what they charge for a tax return.
Well, you can't really do that, but
okay.
We get so much competitive information from customers, okay. Right? We see their customers, and so we know what they're charging. They don't advertise it, although I shouldn't say that. Over the last 3 years, they've become much more transparent. So they will give the prices out up front. They'll post it on their walls. In the old days, they didn't do that. But we know what they charge, and we know how many tax returns that they're preparing in each office. So we know what our opportunity is.
And what percent of the franchisees that you've brought on, say these 5,000 locations, like what percent of the individual franchisees became multi-unit operators where they had more than just one location?
Well, let me say it this way, that if I look at my career at Block and Jackson Hewitt and Liberty and now ATAX, the average franchisee has 7 locations.
Wow. Okay.
So almost about a third of them have just one, and the others will average 11 or 12.
Okay. So with 11 or 12, you're looking at a pretty sizable workforce, and going back to your earlier point, you have to delegate. You can't be micromanaging.
Exactly. You're going to have typically 7 to 10 employees per office. So
Okay.
they'll get to about 100 employees.
Yeah. So there you are a CEO at that point.
Oh, for sure. And that's why you can't be sitting at a desk doing tax returns.
And do these franchisees, so I imagine the 800 or so millionaires you helped create, I imagine at some point they move on to other entrepreneurial ventures. Like, are most of these people, do they then put in a full-time CEO and they're a passive owner, or are they selling the business? Could you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, I mean, if I think of just those 800, they mostly are they're go-getters. They're highly successful. They have a lot of money, and then they're bored from May to December. What else do I do? So they virtually all of them go into other industries. The beauty of it now is that with loyalty brands, we have other industries for them to go into. So we've had a number of them go into first choice business brokers.
Yeah.
We have one of them just inked a deal last week to go into Zoom and grooming and mobile dog grooming. So something else catches their attention. We've had Pilates, we've had kickboxing, we've had eyelashes. I mean, restaurants. You name it. You can about name it. I had dinner in Raleigh 2 days ago with it's a salt franchise where you blow salt air into a room,
Huh.
and they bought a salt franchise. So I'd only heard about that. They bought it about a year ago, so I'd only
Okay.
heard about it that in the last year. But it's and I think the biggest salt franchisor in the country has like 10 locations.
So we're gonna bring on Rafael. I'm very excited. April 9th. I'm probably gonna do that conversation in Spanish. So we'll also have it translated into English later on, or do another one in English. First choice potentially too. Could you just tell us a little bit about Ledgers and what other services they offer, and on that ongoing basis outside of tax season?
Yeah, I think that the reason that I like Ledgers is that it's a middle income accounting franchise. And if you think of name brands in accounting, I mean, the only national names are the final four, like Deloitte and KPMG. And there's no, and those, they typically deal with public companies and much larger. They turn away companies that have less revenue than 5 million or 10 million. So there's really no brand name in the space of 0 to 5 million of revenue.
Sure.
And so there is a company in France called Fiducial that has 600 locations that goes after that. Typically, I mean, when I say 0 to 5, it's mostly under 2 million of revenue. It's the mom and pop.
Okay.
And they have established in France brand name. And they've gone worldwide with over 1,200 locations.
Are they in the States?
They have 30 in the United States.
Okay.
And headquartered in New Jersey, and it's called Fiducial. And if you transpose that and extrapolate from their 600 in the population of France, there could be 4,000 locations in U.S. that has a brand name. And so we're after that. We're after that industry, and I'm excited about that for a couple of things. Appeal to me is number one, I don't have to compete against an H&R Block. I mean, it's tough to compete against a 800-pound gorilla with $2
Sure.
billion in the bank, Fortune 500 company, and that's not. And I've done it successfully in both of my companies,
Twice. Yeah.
Jackson Hewitt and Liberty. I've done it twice and grown faster than them, and now I'm growing faster than them in ATAX. But it's a struggle. If there's no brand name, it's a lot easier. If you're first
Sure.
in market, it's a lot easier. So I like it for that reason, and also I like it for the reason that unlike income tax, it's only viable in 3 countries. H&R Block is only strong in 3 companies: Canada, US, and Australia. But in accounting, you can go worldwide. As I said, Fiducial's in over 60 countries. So
what services is it? You have bookkeeping. What else?
Yeah,
What is offered?
primarily most of the business is bookkeeping and advisory services. The one thing that very few companies do, even accountants, is they don't give you advice about the future.
Sure.
Typically what happens is you go and drop off your information, and they will then take it and they'll keep score. They'll score it and give it back to you. Well, there's a customers need advice for the future
Sure.
and
Yeah.
guidance.
Tax planning and all different types.
Exactly. So those are the two big revenue sources, and of course tax returns. For every accounting customer, we get about 8 tax returns.
Okay. That's solid. And are there any markets in the United States that you're most excited to grow ledgers and some other brands in your portfolio?
Yeah, Patrick, what I learned a long time ago, I had a clever plan, I thought, when we started Jackson Hewitt, that we were in Virginia Beach and we grow to Richmond, and then we go to Raleigh, Durham, and then we go to DC, and then we go to Charlotte, and then Baltimore. So we would strategically, sort of like a battle plan during World War II, right? We planned it all out. And then I had people inquire from areas outside that, and we let them become a franchisee. What I learned is you can take a great franchisee and they can be the record setter for Jackson Hewitt was in Monroe, Louisiana,
Oh,
not
wow.
in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or in Monroe, Louisiana. We opened and did 1,000 returns in Rapid City, South Dakota, first time in the state, and the average back then was just 300 or 400 returns. She did 1,000 in Rapid City. No one had ever been in the state. You can take a great franchisee that follows the system, put them anywhere. If you have the greatest territory in the United States and put one of the people that won't listen in, then it's a horrible value. So it's more about people than geography.
Okay, that makes sense. So are there, I guess, how do you ensure that you don't bring in the wrong franchisees that aren't going to follow your business model? Like, is there a process that you guys have in place on the recruitment side?
Well, we made mistakes, right? And because everyone tells me they're going to listen to me 100%, right? No one leaves training and say, I'm not going to listen to that. So they're either fooling themselves or me or both. So it's hard to tell, but there is a process that they all meet me. I lecture them continuously. You got to follow the system. And then they have to attend a training for a week training before they get final approval. So if at any point in that training, they're acting rebellious or I'm not going to do that, then we will tell them, go away. When a franchisee fails, they can only blame themselves or me. And they always blame me first. I don't need that, right? So we try to weed them out because I don't need anyone telling me that I failed them because they don't follow the system.
Well said. And then franchisees. So for most of your brands, you have an item 19. Those that aren't familiar, it's a disclosure of the financials.
So only 3 of our brands are 2 years old or more.
Okay.
All the others are only a few months. So most do not.
And then, so for someone that's trying to better understand the financials, is it best that they talk to the franchisees, or how can someone get comfortable with some of the brands, including ATAX and ledgers, from a financial perspective?
Absolutely, we put them in touch with the franchisees, and that's an important part of the discovery process is talking to franchisees, because it doesn't matter what we say, it doesn't matter if we're happy. It only matters if the franchisees are happy.
And
One of the reasons I've been so successful as a franchisor is I believe that we need happy, successful franchisees. Most franchisors do not. Half of the franchisors in this country have less than 20 locations because they do not understand that it's not all about them. It's not about the franchisor. If you don't have happy, successful franchisees, you're going to die.
For sure. And we see a lot of those smaller franchise systems that are very concerned with like making a lot of their revenue from the franchise fee, where larger systems, it's coming from royalties and interests are more aligned, where, you're getting franchisors getting paid if the franchisees do well.
The franchisee has to make money and we have to make money, or it's not going to work.
Okay. And then how do you handle like innovation and strategy? Is it all done internal? Do you take some feedback from franchisees? How do you guys adapt product across those brands?
We do one thing that I think is extremely rare, that at our convention, we which is 2.5 days. For 2 days, most of those 2 days are made up of breaking into groups and tell us how to improve. Tell
Yeah.
us how to improve our advertising. Tell us how to improve our tax software. Tell us how to improve. I mean, and then we write every idea down, and then we meet with some franchise representatives, the executives of the company, and decide we're either going to not change it in the future, or change it not this year. And I'm happy to say that after doing this for 30 years, most of the time, more than half the time, we make the changes immediately.
Solid. Okay.
Because I know big picture. They know what the pulse of their customers are and the tools they need to do a better job for their customers. And so we change. We're the most innovative, and franchisees are far more innovative than corporate people, right? They're virtually everything that McDonald's have, from the Big Mac to the milkshakes to the special coffees to the breakfast to, I mean, all of that was invented by franchisees. So you need to.
They're getting feedback daily from
Right.
hundreds, thousands of customers.
Exactly. I have millions and billions, right? I do one text in a year. I don't see the customers. I need people to listen. Even though I've been doing this 52 years, I need to listen to the people that deal with customers day in and day out.
How do you see this market developing, specifically business services, tax, during COVID and then after COVID?
Well, I'll take you back to COVID is a novelty that hasn't been in any of our lifetimes. But if I take you back to 2008 and 2009, the worst recession before COVID, during those 2 years, the Great Recession, Starbucks closed 650 stores. Liberty Tax was the fastest growing chain of any in the country. We opened 650 new stores. Number one fastest growing chain, because during
so in 2008, 2009, you guys opened. You say you had net positive.
650 added offices, and because you don't need to buy a fancy cup of coffee during a recession. You don't need to, but you can't buy a car or a refrigerator or go on a vacation, but you have to file your taxes.
Yes.
So taxes is almost recession proof.
Okay, well said. And how have your franchisees done during this pandemic? Have they about about the same in terms of sales, same store? Or has it gone up, down?
Last year, our offices were closed starting in March.
Okay.
In most of the country, we could not open. So we ended up doing a lot of it. We have app that you can do it online, send us the information and do it. So we had a slight decrease in 2021. This year, we're headed for a nice increase because all of our offices are open.
And so I could see how Ledgers is, really well set up in the future, being like the trusted advisor of these small businesses. But for the tax prep side, I mean, there's a lot of technology players that you can do different things online. How do you guys see competing with that, and how do you see the future dynamic?
Yeah, a lot of people think that online filing is going to put the taxpayers out of business and the accountants out of business. But from 2005 until last year, the percentage of people that pay to prepare was about flat. It actually in 16 years it went from 60% paying a preparer down to 58%. And based on the fact that the number of people that file a tax return every year goes up by a couple percent, actually every year, on average, more people are paying a preparer.
Okay.
And people think that the young people are, if you haven't been in the industry, it seems logical. The young people, they know computers, they do everything on their phone. They're going to do their own tax return. Well, what we've learned over the last since the internet over the last 30 years is that they do games on their phone, and TikTok and Facebook and Twitter, and so they're not doing work on their phone. They're playing games on their phone. So the same percentage of 18-year-olds come and pay a prepare today as 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Wow. Okay. And so I mean, the technology has been there for like what, the last 15 to 20 years, and you don't see that changing much.
Nope.
Why would someone want to file online instead of meeting with, what's like the, what do they tell folks and why they should go to an ATAX or a Ledgers to do the tax?
Well, there's several reasons. There's several reasons, right? Number one is people are afraid of the IRS. You know, I've had tens of thousands of people say to me, John, I'm afraid of the IRS. And we have customers that have done their own return, bring it in for us to do it and sign it because they're afraid of the IRS. So one is fear, and I say thank you. The IRS is about the scariest organization in the country. In fact, no human beings ever told me they were afraid of the FBI or CIA, but tens of thousands have told me I'm afraid of the IRS. So one is fear of the IRS. Then there's change, right? You get married, you get divorced, you have a child, your child goes into the military, you have a capital gain, you buy a home, and that changes your tax situation. And so change drives people to prepare. So it's fear of the IRS and change and a general change in society. You've said a couple times about service businesses. You know, there was no such thing as back when I was starting in taxes, Molly Maid, or, you know, now there's 20 different franchisor and maid services. There's pool cleaning franchises. There's mosquito yard franchises. There's landscaping franchise. We service industries is the only part of the virtually the only part of our economy that's grown over the last 25 years.
Manufacturing,
people to do other things.
Agricultural, it's a lot less percentage.
Right. And when I was a kid, you're young. How many times when you were in high school did you eat out each week?
I would eat out probably at least 2 nights a week.
Yeah. Well, when I was a child, we didn't eat out more than twice a year.
Wow. Yeah, it was a luxury.
Even I mean, there was no such thing as McDonald's. I was in college before I saw the first McDonald's.
Wow.
And back then they had signs, Patrick, that said, "Oh, we sold 830,000 burgers," right? Now it's 800 billion burgers, maybe, but it was so our as a society, we want more and more services, so that drives people to prepare. I'm don't have time to do it. There used to be a 1040 EZ, and they don't have that now, and it ended about 3 years ago. But in the form was one page, and you had to be single, you had to not have moved, and it said there was 27 pages of instructions. And it said in the instructions, it's going to take the average person 2 hours to do this return. And the beauty of our industry is it changes every year. In 52 years, it's changed every year. And massive changes for last year with COVID, and the Democrats are going to change it again. So whenever there's change, there's opportunities.
That elevates you guys as a trusted advisor.
Exactly.
Well said. So you've alluded, kind of the past 20, 30 years. What do you see? How do you see future changes for the next 10, 20 years in the service industry and the needs to, provide an offering for that?
We're going to have more services for sure. I mean, I love our elder care business. Still for the night, 10,000 people a day are turning 65. That's just a growing industry. I love our Hispanic businesses that they're gonna grow by. They've been growing by 6 or 7%. The Hispanic population and the Hispanic
purchasing
gross national product, right? Gross national product. If you took the Hispanic spending out in this country, it would be the 8th largest country in the world in terms of Hispanic, and it's bigger than any other country for Spanish speaking individuals. So I love. We look for industries where there's going to be growth, and there's going to be growth in senior care. There's growth in pandemic. It's horrible, but it helped us in some ways. For example, more people bought pets. So about 8% more people bought a dog during when they were at home because of COVID, and so the grooming business is expanding. I mean, we don't have not one of our locations has less than a 1 month wait to get on a waiting list to get the dog groomed.
It's wild.
So that business is growing. Elder care is growing. Hispanic business is growing, and that's what we're looking for. Industries where that are hot.
Yeah, and you can ride the wave.
Exactly.
Well said.
And for 8 years, next 8 years, 10,000 people a day are going to turn 65, and then they're going to turn 70, and most of them will make it to 70 and 75.
And when you look at the franchises in terms of like investment amount compared to sales, you have, food and beverage where you invest 100, say 200K, the sales are averaging only 200K, but senior care should be 3, 4, or 5x, what the invested capital is in terms of sales.
Our people that buy out of the 5,000 people that bought franchise from me, they're looking for at least double-digit return. I mean, right, 10x or 20x.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely possible. It seems like it's much faster return on investment with a lot of these service industry brands compared to food and beverage and some other industries.
Yeah, if you buy a Dunkin' Donuts, you have to buy a minimum of 3. It's like a $2.5 million investment. You buy a McDonald's, you have to buy multiple. It's like a $5 million investment.
Exactly.
Most of our brands all of the brands so far are $60,000 or $70,000. So I like these brands because I'm into changing people's lives. That drives me. That's the reason I continue to work. And it's if you're investing $3 million to buy Dunkin' Donuts, you're already a millionaire, multi-millionaire, right? But
how are you as John really going to help them and change their life?
Exactly. It's not exciting to change someone that has 10 million to 12 million. Right? That's not exciting. But if I can take someone that has a net worth of 100,000 and make him a millionaire, that's life changing. And so I've changed thousands of people's lives.
Yeah, I imagine the thanks you get from a tax return is a little different than the thanks you get when you turn someone a millionaire.
Yeah, it's a little bit more enthusiastic.
Cool, John. Well, do you have any concluding thoughts? I really appreciated having you on.
It was wonderful. It was a wonderful 45 minutes or however long we've been talking. But my thought is find something you'd like to do, work hard, persevere.
Awesome. Really appreciate the advice. And for any of those, I think we had like 70 or so people register for this, and a few others that want to have a one-on-one call with members of your team from Legacy Brands. So for anyone that's here right now, you can still fill out a form to have a one-on-one call and explore a couple of the brands like Ledgers, ATAX, as well as First Choice Business Brokers. So yeah, appreciate John, and thanks everyone else who joined today.
Thank you, Patrick. Have a great day.
Appreciate it.